Hello again and welcome to another video on drawing a freehand portrait. This is personally how I do it. There are lots of different methods. Of course I will go look at them as well, but you know, this is the way I taught myself and it works for me. It might work for you. As you can see right now, I'm pointing 4 guides, and that's basically to tell me that the page is smaller than what I think it is, because my Achilles heel is, and everyone's got one when they draw portraits, is that I tend to draw bigger than what I want to, and I can draw off the page, so that they are there to basically tell me that the page is this big. So if I draw too big, it doesn't matter if I go outside them guys, because I've got some free space. Okay, so I would normally start off with drawing one of the eyes. I think it's a good starting point. And in terms of telling you how to draw an eye, the main thing is to just really look at your reference, like really study it and look for the simple shapes. Just block out all the skin tones, you know, all the subtle lighting, all that stuff. Just look for the general shape of the eye, what it is, and try and mimic it as best you can. This will really come into play really if you want it to look like the person you're drawing. Obviously I'm going to draw this pretty quick, so it doesn't really look like the person that I'm drawing. It's for the purposes of the video. This has taken me about an hour to do, but if I was doing a piece of line art and I wanted to look like the person I'm drawing, like you see on a lot of my other videos, it can take anywhere up to an entire day, because you have to be able to see where you've gone wrong and where you've gone right, and change it. And a lot of the time you can't really tell if something's wrong until the whole thing is actually completed. But I would say start off with a good reference point, starting block like an eye. A lot of people actually want to just draw the entire circumference of the face in, because then they can block all the features inside. I personally hate that, because like I said, I draw too big. So if I draw in the circumference of the face and then I start with the eyes, then the nose, I find that my lips don't fit in and I have to rearrange everything. It just takes more time. So that's why I said I've got them 4 guides, because I'm allowed to draw too big without going off the page, and I don't have to rearrange facial features and rub them out and then redraw them. But an eye is a good starting point. Once you've blocked in that first eye and you're happy and you're ready to move on, the next tip I've got is how to draw in that second eye, like where the position of it should be. And I don't hear this mentioned that much as well, so it might be quite a good tip if you want to learn how to freehand a portrait. And that's the distance between your eyes, generally, obviously 9 times out of 10 it always works, is the same size as the eye that you've drawn. It's something to do with symmetry, I don't know, but it works. So what I do is I'll place my pencil on the paper, put one end of the pencil in the corner of the eye, and then use my fingers to measure the eye. It's like I place my fingers on one part of the pencil and it tells me the size or the length of that eye, and then I'll move my pencil along and put my fingers in the corner of the eye, and that will tell me the distance between the eyes, and then I'll just mark it. And then I'll move my fingers again to where that mark is, and the end of the pencil again is the size of the second eye. It works every time, keeps everything in proportion as well. It's never failed. And also you can see me placing the pencil on the paper over the tops of her eyes. I'm doing this quite often actually, because she's looking over her left shoulder and this makes her face slightly tilt. So this is telling me where I need to lay that second eye in terms of its height, because I need to get the angle right for it to work. And I'm doing this by placing the pencil down, looking at the reference, and then judging whether it's the right angle. Once you know exactly where your eye is going to sit and you're happy with it, it's time to draw out them simple shapes. It's exactly the same method as the first eye that you drew. Just focus on them shapes, block everything out. You're looking for the distinctive lines and you're going to block them in. Don't try and mimic the eye you've just drawn because you want it to look like the same eye, because obviously people's eyes are the same as the other eye, which is true, but people tend to pull faces or raise their eyebrows, and this can make eyes kind of like very expressive and they can have different shapes. So on this particular drawing, her left eye looks a lot wider than her right eye because her eyebrow is slightly raised and her head is turned to the left. So don't focus on the eye you've just drawn to mimic it. Look at your reference and really focus on that left eye or whatever eye you're drawing, and it should work itself out on its own. Once you have drawn in the pupil and the iris, which is basically a circle within a circle sitting under an eyelid, it becomes a 2/3 half moon type of shape. But again, check your reference because sometimes the iris and pupil are completely exposed depending on what you're drawing. She's looking left because her head's turned left and her eyelid is sitting over her iris a little bit, so that's why it's more half mooned. And you've also got to remember that the eyeball is an orb sitting inside a socket. So once you've drawn in the eyelashes, and I'll just draw a simple shape for the eyelashes, don't need to be detailed in any way yet. I'll draw a crease above the eyelashes where the lid meets the eyelashes, and then I'll draw a crease that's in a half moon shape, and this is the top of the eyeball, the orb, to signify where it's sitting. And then underneath the eye you draw another half moon, which is normally smaller, and this is just to show people on your portrait where that eyeball is sitting. And again, it depends on the person you're drawing because, you know, young skin and old skin is very different. You get smooth skin, you get rough skin, and you can change the look of it. So all you've got to do is remember that you're drawing an orb sitting inside a socket, and look at your reference to make sure that you're matching the shape of the eyeball, if that makes sense. Onto the eyebrows, which are fairly simple to block in. If you've got that eye sorted out and how you want it to look, all you have to do is look at the reference and go from the position of the tear duct, so you can see the angle and the distance that the eyebrow is supposed to start. It is eyeballs, so it is all guesswork, but you know, generally it does work. You can change it any time, it doesn't matter. You can also look for a funny shaped triangle between the starting point of the eyebrow that will go all the way to the middle of the eyebrow and come back to the tear duct and create a funny shaped triangle. If you can match that triangle, you've got the angle right and the distance. As you draw the eyebrow along, you can also measure the distance between the eyelid and the centre of the eyebrow, and you also can tell how long the eyebrow needs to be because you can go from the edge of the eye to the edge of the eyebrow. All you have to do is look at the reference and eyeball the angle and the distance, which again is guesswork, but you know, you just block them in really quickly. They are subject to change. You can change them whenever you want if you don't think they're right. So now the eyes and the eyebrows are drawn in and you're happy again. This is where I would draw in the forehead if it's not covered by hair, and I'll go around past the eye, drawing the cheek all the way down to the chin where the mouth would be. Now I do this because I can measure the tip of the nose in relation to the cheek, and again it's eyeballed, it's guesswork, but it's an educated guess as to where that nose would sit, because I can look at the reference and see on the reference that the nose is this far from the cheek. So if I've already drawn the cheek in, I can make an educated guess on where the nose is going to sit. and then from that point I can measure the end, or how wide the nose is going to be. 9 times out of 10, but it does depend on nose shape, but this generally works. The ends of the nostrils sit pretty much in line with the pupil, the edge of the pupil, middle of the pupil, halfway through the iris and the pupil, around that area. So if you put your pencil on the reference photo, whether you're using a tablet or a piece of paper, you put it on the edge of the nostril, facing vertical, you can see where that nostril sits in relation to where the eye is. Most of the time it'll sit in the centre of the pupil, or the edge of the pupil, and then you can just go back to your drawing, put your pencil down on the drawing in a vertical position, lined up from the edge of the pupil or wherever it sits, and say, right, the nose sits here, this is the end of the nostril. Do that on both sides, and then you also know where the end of the nose is in relation to the cheek, so you can draw the nose in and have confidence that it's sitting in the right position. Also, when it comes to noses, I don't like to draw in the bridge of the nose unless absolutely necessary, like on more profile type portraits, mainly because it can put me off in where I think the nose is supposed to sit. Might not work that way for you, might work absolutely fine for you, it doesn't really matter. It's just, that's why I haven't done the bridge of the nose. I find it much better to just draw a nice simple shape of the nose and where it's supposed to sit, and then later on when I start shading, I can show you the bridge of the nose through shading. It's much simpler for me and much quicker drawing out the line out that way. Okay, so on to the lips. Another Achilles heel of mine. I can never get them the right shape the first time. I don't know why, but I just keep going and going and going until I get them right, which is the only thing you can do really, because you're doing the same as everything else. You're keeping an eye on the reference and mimicking the shape, but the shape is never right the first time with me. Might not be the same for you, I don't know. But if you want to know where they sit again, you need to eyeball the distance between the base of the nose and the top of the lips. Again, it's guesswork, so it's subject to change. And in terms of the thickness, it's the same as the nose. Just put your pencil vertically on your reference photo and see where it sits in relation to where the eyeball is. On this, she's got quite wide lips, so it's the far edge of the iris, I believe. And you've got that on both sides, just mark it, and then you draw in the lips. And I know I said before that like the nose sits in the centre of the pupil or the edge of the iris. It does, but on this particular woman, she's got quite a thin nose and it's right on the edge of the other side of the iris, so the lips are sitting on the other edge of the iris, if that makes sense. The model on the reference photo is wearing a very fancy coat that covers most of her neck, so I've decided to draw that in so I can see where the chin will sit in relation to that coat, so I can finish the lips, because I can judge how thick the lips need to be in relation to the chin, and I can't really tell where the chin's going to sit without drawing in another object to tell me where that chin will sit. Again, it's guesswork like all portraits, and you can rub them out and change the position whenever you want, but I can draw in other objects to tell me where other objects need to sit, so I can finish the lips or the nose or vice versa. So I've skipped this portrait along a little bit so I can discuss how to draw the ears. Again, ears are different on every different person. Some are big, some are small, and they're actually very easy to put in, because if you do them at this stage, which I'll recommend, you've got a lot of drawing already on the paper that you can use to measure in relation to where they're supposed to sit. Like the base of the earlobe is going to line up with something. You just need to look at the reference. I think on this particular portrait they lined up with pretty much the base of the eyeball, So that's where I could say where the bottom was, and the top would probably be at the top of the eyebrow. But you know, it could be they got really long ears and it's like the base of the nose and it lines up with the top of the eyeball. It's really easy to figure out where they're supposed to sit. And the rest of the ear is basically you're looking at your reference photo and you're just seeing what shape is inside that ear, the creases and the folds. Just draw on the basic shapes. People's minds will fill in the blanks and they'll know what it is. And this very neatly leads me to the hair, which in the grand scheme of things is a piece of cake really, because you've already got everything blocked out that matters, and you can easily tell how high the forehead needs to be or where the hair is going to sit in relation to the rest of the objects you've laid on the page, like the eyes and the nose and the lips. Hair's also very forgiving because many people have different hairstyles, and if you wanted you can draw your own hairstyle on this person and it'll still be that person because her facial features haven't changed. So in the grand scheme of things, this is the easiest part of the entire portrait. All I'm doing here is blocking out the shapes. Most of the hair is drawn in through shading, and I think that I will do a video on how to draw hair at some point. It's in my diary of videos to do eventually. I'll get round to it, but I will generally just block in the shapes of the hair so I get the forehead right, and then I'll just shape the hair through shading later on. So there is no detail in this, it's just the shape. So it's there for me as a future reference on where I need to lay down my tones and lights and darks and that kind of stuff. So the rest of this portrait is basically shading and drawing in the rest of the coat, which wasn't really needed for this video. I've shown you what I needed to draw your own freehand portrait. But I've decided to time-lapse it and show you the shading side of things to prove that if your line art isn't bob on before you start shading, it doesn't matter how good of a shader you are, it won't look right. And that's where I would say that you need to spend a good few hours on your line art getting it perfect before you start shading, and then you haven't got to worry about it not turning out how you want it to. I used a piece of willow charcoal to quickly, smash out the shading on this to prove my points for the video and add a bit of depth. I kind of like how it turned out. I think I'll add it to the archive of drawings that may never see the light of day again. But yeah, I like how it turned out and I hope you did too. So that's it for this portrait, guys. I hope it helped. I hope you got some great tips on how to freehand a portrait. If you have any questions on anything I didn't discuss in this video, just leave me a comment. I will answer. Please like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.